You didn't become this version of yourself by accident. The way you hesitate before speaking, the way you read people's moods before your own, the way you try to be easy, agreeable, low maintenance, that didn't just happen. At some point, without even realizing it, you started shaping yourself into someone safer. Safer to be around, safer to love, safer to keep. And the strange part is, it probably worked. But what if the personality you rely on today was never really you? What if it was just the version of you that survived? Think about this for a second. There was a time when you were younger when your reactions were more natural. You laughed louder. You asked more questions. You expressed things without filtering every word. Then slowly, something changed. Maybe you noticed that being too expressive annoyed someone. Maybe your emotions were ignored or dismissed. Maybe you were praised only when you were good, quiet, or easy. So you adjusted, not consciously, not dramatically, just quietly. You started holding things in. You started observing more than expressing. You started becoming the version of yourself that caused the least friction. And no one sat you down and explained this. There was no moment where you said, "I'm going to change who I am." It just happened. Little by little, day by day, until one day that version of you became your default. And now it feels like that's just who you are. But here's the part most people don't realize. That version of you was built for a specific environment, a specific set of people, a specific emotional climate. It was never designed for your entire life. It was designed to protect you, to keep you from being rejected, to keep you from being criticized, to keep you from feeling like too much or not enough. And it worked. You learned how to read the room. You learned how to stay likable. You learned how to avoid conflict. But protection has a cost, because when you build yourself around survival, you slowly lose connection with who you are outside of it. Pause for a moment. Ask yourself this honestly. If you weren't trying to be accepted, if you weren't trying to avoid judgment, would you still act the same way? Or would something about you feel different? A lot of people think personality is fixed, that you're either quiet or expressive, confident or anxious, independent or dependent. But what if those traits aren't just who you are? What if they're adaptations? Think about the person who always says, "It's fine," even when it's not. That didn't come from nowhere. That likely came from a time when expressing frustration led to conflict or rejection. So they learned to minimize themselves. Think about the person who overthinks every message before sending it. That probably came from a time when saying the wrong thing had consequences. So now, they try to control every possible outcome. Or the person who feels uncomfortable asking for help. Maybe they learned early that their needs weren't going to be met, so they stopped having them out loud. These aren't random personality traits. They're strategies, survival strategies. And the problem is, you don't stop using a survival strategy just because you're no longer in danger. Here's where it gets deeper. The version of you that helped you survive might be the same version that's holding you back now. Because what protected you before might be isolating you now. Being quiet kept you safe, but now it makes you feel unseen. Being agreeable avoided conflict, but now it makes you feel unheard. Being independent protected you from disappointment, but now it makes you feel alone. And it's confusing, because on the outside, nothing seems wrong. You're functioning. You're managing. You're doing what you're supposed to do. But inside, something feels off. Like you're slightly disconnected from your own life. Like you're playing a role instead of fully being in it. And here's the part that most people never say out loud. Sometimes you don't even know who you are without the survival version because it's been with you for so long. It shaped your choices, your relationships, your reactions. It became your identity. So when someone tells you to just be yourself, it feels confusing. Because which version is that? Pause again. When was the last time you did something not because it was expected, not because it was safe, but because it genuinely felt like you? No overthinking. Just you. This is where the shift begins. Not by forcing yourself to change overnight, not by rejecting the version of you that survived, because that version of you isn't the enemy. It helped you. It protected you when you needed it most. But you're not in the same place anymore, and you don't need to keep living like you are. The goal isn't to destroy that personality, it's to recognize it, to see it for what it is, a response, not a definition. Because once you see it clearly, you start to notice it in real time. You notice when you're about to stay quiet, even though you want to speak. You notice when you're about to say, "It's fine," even though it's not. You notice when you're shrinking yourself, just to keep things comfortable. And in those moments, you get a choice. A small one at first, but powerful. Maybe you say one thing you would have normally held back. Maybe you admit how you actually feel. Just a little. Maybe you stop over-explaining and just let your words exist. It won't feel natural at first. In fact, it might feel uncomfortable because you're stepping outside of something that once kept you safe. But that discomfort, it's not danger, it's unfamiliar freedom. And slowly, something changes. You start to feel more present, more real. Not perfect, not fully figured out, but closer to yourself than you've been in a long time. Because the truth is, you were never too quiet, or too much, or too sensitive. You were adapting, you were surviving, and you did what you had to do. But you don't have to stay there. You're allowed to grow beyond the version of you that was built out of fear. You're allowed to rediscover parts of yourself that never got the chance to exist. And most importantly, you're allowed to be someone who isn't just surviving anymore, but actually living.